Shabbat Shalom. It is interesting how after a few more weeks of each week building up a little more knowledge and comfort, and if you saw the hand signals that we were using to communicate who's where and what is going on, you would be entertained, I hope, realizing that this beauty of partnership that comes together as we share this act of worship with you. And it's really extraordinary because it's partnership not just from us that are here, and a huge thank you to Marlis Humphrey, a member of our board who comes and is running our tech station. And we will have opportunities probably in the near future for volunteers to be able to do that, and we will happily train you, but also for all of you. How remarkable it is how quickly we have learned and had the courage to get onto Zoom so we can be together for services. If we can't be together in person, we can make use of what we have to be able to get where we need to be. So here, on this Shabbat, this is the Shabbat of Bereshit, a new beginning. Bereshit bara Elohim et hashamayim ve'et haaretz. When God began creating the world, as the cantor likes to say, was tohu vavohu, topsy-turvy. It was chaos, it was darkness, and was breath over the deep, and God said, let there be light. And if you joined us last week, how amazing, how incredible to be able to read the end of the story and the death of Moses and the people transitioning, and the last word, Yisrael, with that lamed, and then taking out another scroll and winding it to Genesis, and seeing the next word be Bet of Bereshit, that we start again with our heart in between, our lev in between. And so on this Shabbat, we read Bereshit. We read the story of creation. 6 days God worked, did malacha to create our world. And then the seventh day God took Shabbat. God rested, just like we work for 6 days. And on this seventh day we do these acts of avodah, these acts of service, of kindness, of compassion, of love. We change the energy of this day. Also part of this portion right after that description of Shabbat in Genesis 2, you of course get the geography of the Garden of Eden, where you have the 4 rivers going out in the 4 directions in this, and you have the creation of Adam, this human being coming from the earth of the 4 corners and given the breath of life, and Eve coming as Ezer Kenegdo, a helpmate, in the animals, and there's naming, and there's tilling and tending and dominion and all kinds of incredible things. And then, of course, there's also a tree. Eitz Chaim Hi, it is the tree of life, it is the tree of knowledge of good and evil, and it is sitting there in the garden looking luscious and beautiful with fruits ready to be plucked. And we could have quite the discussion. Are they apples? Are they pomegranates? Are they figs? What was that tree and what was the fruit? But we don't have to ever ask who was the animal that was crawling in the tree, calling over to Adam and Eve, saying, ooh, look, luscious fruits. It was the serpent. And calling first to Eve and then to Adam, and they ate from the one tree. Not to eat everything else, but don't eat from this tree. Yeah, always that, don't push this red button. And yet the red button was there. If you have children my generation, there's this incredible show called Phineas and Ferb, where there are 104 days of summer vacation. It kind of feels like what we're in now in this state, and it's these 2 little boys, and they come up with all kinds of creative ways to enjoy the world, and yet there is also the evil Dr. Doofenshmirtz, and he is there to conquer the tri-state area. Every episode he tries to conquer, and he comes up with all kinds of crazy inventions. But this is the part that always catches my attention. What does he put into all of his creations that will allow him to take over the world? A self-destruct button. That's right. A button that if you push it, it will stop his machine and stop his scheme and end his ability to take over the tri-state area, always right on the cusp of getting power. That's what the tree of knowledge of good and evil is there. It's that little red button, somehow a circuit breaker. And there is Adam, and there is Eve, and there is the serpent, and serpent is laying down the seduction, something hard. saying, don't you want to be like God? Oh, it's just a little fruit. Why would God put it there? And there is Eve eating it and then passing it to Adam, and there's Adam and Eve enjoying the fruit. And what was that knowledge of good and evil? It was our free will. It was our having to understand between our Yetzer Hara and our Yetzer Hatov, our evil inclination and our good inclination, this incredible responsibility. And of course, if we also have that responsibility of making that choices, we can't stay in the perfect place in Garden of Eden where everything is provided and everything is there. Suddenly we go from being infinite and eternal like the Garden of Eden, like God, to having to go out of the garden, to becoming finite, to becoming mortal, and to till and to toil and struggle and strive in the world. There is quite a consequence for Adam and Eve, and it has a lot of pain and angst. We're in the midst of that pain and angst. But more than that story in particular, there's one word that has always captured my attention in so many incredible ways. Adam and Eve eat from the tree. And then they realize that, in fact, they're naked, that they are vulnerable to the world, that they are finite, that they are mortal, and they have to make a choice about being vulnerable or adding layers of protection. They put on clothes, and then they hide because they're like, wait a second, something has changed here, something is off, something is wrong, and we don't think God is going to be happy with us. And they hide, and God, realizing they're hiding, realizing something is now out of balance in that place of shalom, in that place of harmony and balance, says, Ayekah, where are you? Omnipotent, omniscient gods don't have to really ask, where are you? God knows where Adam and Eve are. And so the rabbis see this and know this and hear this, and they acknowledge God didn't need to ask. God is God. God knows where Adam and Eve are. So why is God asking that? And it's to call attention to Adam and Eve that God knows the relationship has changed. And my first inclination was to see this exchange of Ayekah and then Adam having to answer Hineni. Here I am, God, I know something's changed. We need to have a talk about it. And my first inclination was seeing this, knowing something's out of balance, something is off, and God, with grace and kindness and compassion and concern and upset, says Ayekah, so Adam will have a chance to say Hineni. And part of me wants to see it with that kindness and compassion and concern and a little bit of upset. The rabbis see a lot of evasion and playing dumb, that Adam's trying to, there's nothing to see here, God. Don't mind the fact that we're now wearing clothes. And that he is saying, it's not really a problem, we'll just stay, and trying to avoid the consequence. But there's still others that talk about it and see it as this moment of grace and compassion, where God says, I know something's up, and so I know the relationship's changed. I know the relationship's is strained, and so I'm going to give Adam and Eve a chance. I'm going to call out to them. I'm going to give them some space to respond. And so this beautiful interplay of God saying, Ayekah, where are you all? Because I'm worried. And Adam and Eve being able to say, Hineni, here we are. We're not sure where this is. We need to have a talk about it. And that first inclination really struck me in this world where there is so much that is disjointed, where there is so much that is difficult, where so many of our interactions are two-dimensional on a screen. If we're lucky, we can't sit. How much communication and interaction do we lose because we can't sit in a room with somebody and have a real conversation with all of the nuance, with all of our senses? And so part of me sees that beautiful interplay of Ayekah, Hineni, and it says, this is what we need to do in this time and space. where there is so much discord, where there is so much disruption, where there is so much upset, that we have to use this Ayekah and Hineni. We have to be like God, willing to ask and willing to listen. Ayekah, I see you there and something's not right, or something doesn't, or something seems off, or something seems strange, and we have to ask, and the rabbis say God then listens. Like Marco Polo, the game of Marco Polo in the pool of one person calling Marco, and then listening to hear the response of where the other person is, or if you want to put it in Jewish theological terms, Martin Buber, the I calls out to the thou, but then stops to listen to the thou. There's also, maybe we need to be a little bit of Adam. If God calls out and says, Ayekah, if one of our loved ones, if a malach, an angel, somebody coming to help connect us to the divine or to the transcendent, calls out to check on us and says, Ayekah, where are you? Are you okay? We have to be able to hear it and respond. Say, yeah, I'm okay, or no, I'm not okay, and here's what I need. That calling back and forth is so vital in this time where there is so much strain and brokenness and upset, that we have to keep replying back and forth, because that, with those holy connections, with that light and love, that is the only way that we are going to get across this very narrow bridge where we find ourselves. That was my sermon. So that's nice and that's sweet. And then I really started to look at the commentaries a second time. And I really started to think about the world we live in and how I'm moving through the world and how I see so many others. And I realized that as much as I want it to be this beautiful and sweet and kindness and compassion, Ayekah, Hineni, there's something more. I know I feel it. I look around the world and I feel like Adam after the fruit. I'm not saying that I ate the forbidden fruit necessarily, but I look around and I see the brokenness that is in creation, the upset and the tumult and the turmoil. And I know, if I'm really honest with myself, like Adam had to be in that moment, Adam and Eve, as I look around at climate, as I look around at pandemic, as I look around at political discourse, I know, as much as I would like to say it's not true, that I am involved, that I am responsible. I'm on the hook because it's a mess. And either I'm part of the mess or I'm at least responsible as I sit in it. How much, as we are moving through this world, how often do we choose our Yetzer Hara over our Yetzer Hatov, our evil inclination over our good inclination? How often do we respond with the dark side of our force? That we respond to the world and react to the world and bring into this world harshness and anger because we're trying to cover some vulnerability? How often do we, either by accident or on purpose, find ourselves standing in our neighbor's blood? How often do we let it be someone else's problem or let somebody else fix it? How often are we rationalizing or justifying? How often are we putting stumbling blocks in front of people or cursing the deaf? This is happening way more than it needs to. It's all over our world, and I know that I am at least one of the Adam, one of the human beings that's part of that. As I say that, I think about that interaction and that experience in the Garden of Eden once more in a very different way. Because if I'm really honest and I understand that I am part of that, I have to envision, I have to think about it, that it's God or the community or even myself looking down and saying, Ayekah, not where are you, but what are you doing? Why are we doing this to ourselves? Why are we doing this to our family and friends? Why are we doing this to the world? And I say that with that question and that challenge and that personal reflection, and I realize that it would be easy for me to say, oh, Ayekah, why are you doing that, and act all judgmental. But God doesn't really do that. There is a consequence, Adam and Eve leaving the Garden of Eden, having to till and toil and strive and all of the stuff they had to deal with. But if you really look into Genesis, it's not judgment, it is consequence, but it comes with this offer to help. And that's the thing. When you really hear, Ayekah, what are you doing? Where are you? And why are you doing this? If the answer is, stay out of my business, or, oh, I'm hiding for you, oh, it's not my fault, then we're missing something. Because it's not just going to get cleaned up and go away. What Ayekah is partnership. God is saying, I see something's wrong, and there are going to be consequences, but this is an opportunity, Adam and Eve, to fix the brokenness, to think about what the real problem is, really dig deep and fix it. Because if you look at our Torah, if you look at our tradition, if you look at how Judaism sees humanity, it is absolutely true that God offers a harsh consequence to Adam and Eve, that they are finite beings and they are vulnerable and they have to work for their food and struggle with very fragile bodies. But over and over again, with story after story, it doesn't matter if it's Adam and Eve, if it's Cain after he kills Abel, if it's Noah, or if it's Abraham and Sarah, if it's Jacob and his family, or Joseph, or Moses and Aaron and Miriam, it doesn't really matter, because each one of them, every time when they find those places of brokenness and consequence, what happens? God is there as a partner with tools, with miracles, with insight, with ruach and koach to help them. As they answer Ayekah with Hineni, here I am, there is always something to help us get to the place where we need to go, back on that road to Shalom, back on that road to the Garden of Eden. And so on this Shabbat, not only do I want you to be that person that offers Ayekah or hears and says Hineni with that grace and kindness and compassion, creating those bubbles of relationship where we can restore communication, but I also ask you, like Adam did in that moment, to do those acts of self-reflection, that responsibility, not just so it goes away or we can get past it, but so that we, with all of our heart and soul and might, are able to really understand what the brokenness is, where we're finite and where we're infinite, where we have our Yetzer Hara and where we have our Yetzer HaTov. And as we read in Deuteronomy on Yom Kippur, as we say over and over again, God set before us life and death, blessing and curse. Let us, on this Shabbat, like Adam and all of our ancestors before us, seek ways to bring goodness and blessing and life into our world. Ayekah, where are we? What are we doing? Hineni, here I am to bring shalom. Amen. Shabbat shalom.